response of the audience. But 30 years is a long time to work on something.
Sure.
Yeah.
Tell me about that play.
No, can't do that.
Can't tell me even a little bit?
No.
Not even a tiny bit.
That's one of the reasons it took 30 years. A writer should never be permitted to discuss his works except make him produce the work first. Then he'll talk his head off. But if he talks his head off before he produces the work, you wind up talking and no work. So please.
Have you broken that rule before and had bad luck with it? Or?
I've broken that rule many times. But I've gotten wiser as I've gotten older. So I'd rather not talk about it if you don't mind.
Hey. Chris? You're done. You're good to go? Did you live in Georgia until you went to Howard? You did?
Yeah, I was born in Cogdell, Georgia, which had no school system, so I moved to Waycross when I was 5 to enter the school system, stayed there until I graduated from high school, and then ultimately went to Washington, D.C. to study at Howard University.
Why Howard? What brought you there?
I had 2 aunts who lived in Washington, D.C. When I graduated from high school, I had 2 scholarships, but we were too poor for me to take advantage of either one. I had a scholarship to Tuskegee, couldn't go, a scholarship to Georgia State. So it was decided that I should stay out of school for 1 year to see if the family could raise some money to send me off to college. Meanwhile, there were 2 sisters, my mother's 2 sisters, who were working as domestics in Washington, D.C. So it was decided that maybe if I could get to Washington, D.C., I could go to school up there. So we took a year off to raise the needed money. At the end of the year, I had $10 and a lunch. And I waved goodbye to my family, went to the highways at the edge of the city, and hitchhiked from Valdosta, Georgia, all the way up to Washington. I found those aunts. I registered, no, I didn't register at Howard at the beginning. There was a thing called the National Youth Administration, which was a scholarship organized and superintended by Eleanor Roosevelt and Mayor McLeod Bethune. And all of us country boys, you know, people like me, who had no chance at all to raise that tuition money, if our marks were sufficiently good, the NYA would pay our tuition and give us a stipend. So I applied for that, and I got it.
Oh, wow.
So I was able to live with my aunts, to work in the library at Howard, and to study there.
Mr. Davis, how long did you stay in Howard?
I was in Howard 3 years. I should have stayed 4, but I got some information which I thought was all that I needed, so I didn't stop to finish. I took advantage of the information, and that information was simply that there was a theater group being formed in Harlem called the Rose McClendon Players. And it was suggested by a professor of mine that if I wanted to write plays, you know, it would be a good idea if I went and joined a theater company so I could learn what playwriting was all about. And the practical place for theater, as far as blacks were concerned at that time, was the Harlem community. So I didn't wait to finish. I went to Harlem, found this group, asked them to let me join. They did. And I got into the theater. That was in 1939. And except for time out for World War II, I've been involved in the industry and the art ever since.
How?
Thank you. Mr. Davis, Al Hall from Family Radio, WJFR. I was wondering if I could ask some film industry related questions about the status of blacks in the film industry at this time.
Well, you could, but I have to make the caveat that I don't study the industry. I don't know the statistics.
Okay.
I'm an outsider looking in like everybody else.
Right. Well, I was just wondering, basically, the feel of the African American actors about the nominations, the recent nominations in the category of best actresses of Denzel Washington, Halle Berry, and Will Smith. Is that a very positive?
Oh, that's positive. There's a lot of excitement, but that's a blip. That's a blip. You know, it could happen this year, next year, it may not happen. It depends upon, number one, the quality of work that we put out there for the public to see, and also the pressure behind the scene by the NAACP, the Urban League, and everybody else who can squeeze somebody and make them holler. I'm happy to see Denzel back again, Halle Berry out there, and who else?
Will Smith.
Yeah, Will Smith for Ali. You know, all of these are wonderful people,
Right.
and they qualify.
Yes, sir.
Cuba Gooding Jr.
Yeah, but he's not out there this year.
The background, the industry behind the camera at this time, the creative part, for instance, the writers, directors, film scores. How are African Americans doing in that portion of the industry in your side?
We're not doing as well as we should, and that's really where we need the most pressure. You know, even in the bad old days, you could find blacks who were in front of the camera. You know, Stephen Fetchit, or I forget now who won the first Academy Award for Gone with the Wind.
Right.
Yeah. And since those days, of course, more and more blacks have found their way to the front of the camera, thanks to pressure and common sense in Hollywood. But it's behind the scene, where artistic control and creative power and financial success, you know, are at stake. That's where we're lagging now. We need more producers. And I'm glad to see that the Halle Berry film, the Monster, what is it?
Monsters Ball.
Monsters Ball, that one of the producers is a black man. That's good. We need more work for black directors, because there's a lot of good guys out there who are not doing anything. And writers, in all those categories where power and influence are being deployed, we need a better representation coming from the minority communities.
You've had a chance to work with Spike Lee in a number of films. Tell me about your relationship with him and how you found so much success working with him.
Well, Spike is my role model. He's my friend, and Spike also has given me more paying jobs than any other director that I've ever worked for. So he has a special place of honor in my household. But the strange thing about it, about our relationship, is this. My wife and I were doing an appearance in the Village Vanguard, and we did poetry and stories, Langston Hughes, stuff like that. And we had 4 backup musicians down in the Village, and one of the backup musicians was a young man who played the bass, whose name was Joyce Lee. I paid no attention to that fact. There was no reason why I should. Later, Ruben, I got a letter from a young man who said that his father was Joyce Lee, who had worked behind us at the Village Vanguard, that he himself was going to be a filmmaker. And one of these days, he's going to work with Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee. And we put it on the pile of letters that we get from young people all the time and paid no attention to it. We had no idea of Spike Lee or who he was. He was introduced to us by our son, Guy Davis, who is an actor as well as a blues guitarist. And our son told us about this film that was coming out, She's Gotta Have It, by a friend of his named Spike Lee. And our son had invested in the film. And to his great surprise, Spike Lee paid off his investors, which is not, producers don't do that. So we were all amazed at this young man who could make a film and pay his investors back. So at a party one night, Guy brought him along and introduced him to us, and he said he wanted to meet us because he had a script he wanted us to take a look at. It was School Days, and he wanted me and Ruby to work in the film. Ruby was involved in something at the time, but I was able to work with Spike in School Days just one day. And I went down to Atlanta, did the job. Already he was ahead of schedule and under budget. And yet, as I worked with him, I was aware that I was dealing with a man who knew exactly what he was doing and how to do it. And part of his great gift is that he knows how to cast better than anybody else in Hollywood. This guy knows an actor and what the camera will see in that actor better than anybody else. Name the people at Spike who came through Spike who are still out there, top flight people. Sam Jackson, is only one of them.
Right.
And all of that. Rosa Perez, there's other people. So Spike casts very well, and then he lays back and lets the actor do the job. He's there, he's usually in the scene because he's an actor too. But, there's no problem with him. No, hold up, no, what does that mean? Why are you doing that? None of that. So he's able to get along with actors and to move things along. I was tremendously impressed. Before we finished School Days, I said, hey, I got another script I want you and Miss D to take a look at. Okay, what is it? I said, a thing called Do the Right Thing. Said, okay, I want you to play the mayor. So I said, fine. And I looked at the script, and Boom and I looked at it. And we liked it very much, but there were some questions, about things that he had done and some that he hadn't done that we raised with him. And he's very polite, he listens well, very attentive, and then he chooses what of your material he wants. And if you suggest something that he likes, he will include it. But if it doesn't fit in, he'll thank you for it and not use it at all. He's very independent that way. So we worked with him, and by the time we finished that one, he said, I got another film I want to do. And he wanted us both to be in it. And we could not do, what was it, Mo Better Blues?
Right.
I was working in Florida, something, so I missed that one. And then we did Jungle Fever together. And then I reprised my eulogy for Malcolm X for his Malcolm X film. And then I did Get on the Bus with Spike.
Right.
So I got to know him. I like the young man. This is a very gifted man. And it's a great pleasure to work with him.
Well, Mr. Davis, are there any organizations or guilds or groups that blacks have, the industry related, that's exclusively for maybe networking and other than the standard film organizations in Hollywood?
The one institution that we do have is the NAACP. As you know, they have every year their own tribute, the Image Awards, and where they pay tribute to contributions, not only by blacks but by others, relative to us and to our history and to our struggle. But also they're Johnny on the case. They're looking, they're checking, they're writing letters to the editor and to the networks. And they, I would say, might be the leading institution in the struggle for diversity in film. There are other institutions, and you know that there are even in the Actors Guild, Screen Actors Guild, and various other institutions where we do have groups or committees or whatever that are involved in pressing for a fair representation. But I would say, my personal opinion is that NAACP by far.
You mentioned network a moment ago. How are we doing with the in your opinion, with the television across the board?
Oh, you mean that kind of network?
Yes.
We're not doing as well as we should. There are stories out there now. But the major networks, you know, NBC, CBS, ABC, you know, are much more traditional now in their casting. It's on Fox and Warner Brothers that you will see Black life, you know, shown pretty much for what it is. No, I think we have not yet, with the networks, established a kind of presence that would sort of guarantee that in most stories some blacks would show up, because that's the way it is in life. We're still pressing that point with them.
Was it a choice, and if so, why did you get so involved with the civil rights movement, joining with Malcolm X and others and Dr. King? What drove you to do that? You didn't have to.
Well, I thought I did, and being black, just being black alone is a sufficient motivation
Sure.
for a lot of what I did. But consider, in particular, what it was like when I finished high school in 1934. In 1934, Hitler was beginning to stir in Europe, but Mussolini, you know, was kicking the Ethiopians around, and by 35, he'd run Haile Selassie out of Ethiopia. And there was a tremendous furor in the black community around that point. And all of us, schoolboys, teachers, whatnot, were deeply concerned about what was happening overseas. Also, we knew that Hitler was out to get the Jews, but we knew that he wouldn't stop if he got the Jews.
Sure.
That we'd possibly be the next. So it was that when I got to Howard University in 1935, you know, there was a tremendous furor on campus among the young people. Not only were the campus was composed of a student body that came not only from America, but there were youngsters from the Caribbean. There were Africans on campus, and we were deeply concerned about what was going to happen and what we could do to help Ethiopia, and how we could go about forcing our own government to give us fair shake at the jobs that were created even by the war industry. So it was that on campus I became involved with student activities aimed at changing things. And when I went to New York in 1939, you know, I stepped into a hotbed of activity. Paul Robeson had just come back from Europe, you know, and the war had officially started, and what was happening in Africa around the question of colonialism. At that time, there were only 2 countries on the African continent that were free, Liberia and Ethiopia. Every other single country in Africa, you know, was the colony of a European power. And there was a tremendous amount of agitation among us about that, and a determination, you know, that should end. And when I came into the theater, there was, as I say, people like Paul Robeson, like Canada Lee, like Lena Horne, already in the thick of fighting to make things better, trying to get us jobs in Hollywood, trying to get us jobs on Broadway. We trying to get the government to pass an anti-lynching bill. All of these, this was the natural scene when I came into the theater. So it was not an extraordinary thing, it was what we all did.
Sure.
And that's how I got involved. And it was the right choice, I'm sure.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
unless you have any other questions, photographer would like to take you to the deck outside to get some nice environmental shots. Were you agreeable to that?
Well, I'm agreeable to that, but has
Mr. Davis,
the gentleman. Yes, sir.
how were your years at Howard?
How were my years at Howard? Oh, the most exciting thing that had happened to me. You know, I just come from a small town in Georgia, and here at Howard, not only a big urban city, but the capital of the United States, and all those beautiful buildings, and the Library of Congress, and various places that you could go. Howard was, I suppose, one of the most exciting periods of my life.
May I ask just one other question, please? You're involved in so many facets of the industry, Mr. Davis. What are your concentrations in the future? What areas are you just going to, like film, or you're writing, or directing, just whatever comes up, or just what are you?
I have a plan. I have a focus. I have, over the course of my life, put off many things that I had promised myself that I would do, all having to do with writing. So now that I'm 84, and I suspect I ain't gonna be here all that much longer, if I'm serious, I think I better get to this writing job, you know. So I intend to spend the rest of my life writing and putting on stage the works that I've written. I like film, I like television, but it is on stage, you know, that it comes alive for me. That's my obligation to myself. So writing and working on stage. That's for me.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. I've given to young actors before. I got on stage in 1946, immediately after World War II. And this was a war fought to eliminate racism. So when I came home, there was a lot of ferment in the creative community, the artistic community. Well, what are we going to do? How are we going to? We got to change things. We can't have a world where Hitlers can come along and kill people. Got to do something about race. So there were plays on Broadway, even film, dealing with black people. And before, where we had been excluded, now it seemed over. Hey, come. And we were sort of. I was a part of the generation that was integrated, coming from the community theaters to whatever Broadway had to offer. There was one play called Anna Lucasta, which began in the Harlem community. And Broadway saw it, bought that play and that cast from Harlem down to Broadway. And I was among the young people who came and acted in that particular play. So when I got there, it was triumph, it was joy, it was, hey, we made it. It was a great feeling.